Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today, I'm going to be talking about two albums at once. Porter Robinson's Worlds, and Madeon's Adventure. So I decided to change up things a little bit for this review. I don't know how often I'll be doing side-by-side album reviews in the same video in the future, but I decided to do this for these albums for a few reasons. One, because both have been requested more than a few times. Two, because I don't think I'd have enough to say about them individually. And three, because I feel like these albums pretty much beg to be compared to each other. Now, I did know about both of these albums before they were requested. You may recall that I put Adventure as an honorable mention on my best albums list. Plug. As I said in that video, I remembered everybody praising the guy before and immediately after the album was released, but after a while everybody just weirdly dropped him off the radar and forgot about him.
Who's Madeon?
Meanwhile, Porter Robinson stayed pretty high on the dance charts well after the fact, and right now his album is higher on the iTunes dance charts than Madeon's album is. I never saw the hyped iTunes reviewers before the album was released, so I didn't have any big preconceptions going into the album. The closest thing I saw to an overhyped fan on Porter Robinson was the editor's notes on the album, who really seemed to emphasize the fact that there was orchestral strings on the song Fellow Feeling. That's amazing, iTunes editor! Something that's totally never been seen before, and isn't the entire basis around bands like Hybrid, among many other examples or something. Aside from that, though, I saw a bunch of other reviewers comparing Porter Robinson to Madeon, and marking Madeon down for sounding similar, and having heard Madeon's album first, well, I was expecting a similar experience out of Porter Robinson. Now, I've been listening to both of their albums back to back several times over the past few days, and I've come to a few conclusions. First of all, yes, all those comparisons are totally justified. These two guys have very similar production styles. They both have lots of bright, sunny melodies, and a very bombastic, huge, and intense, but still highly melody-driven style inspired by indie rock. And also both are slightly lacking in the variety department. And second of all, one album clearly came out on top for me, and that album was, without question, Madeon's Adventure. Porter Robinson's production style sounded like some kind of Skrillex wannabe trying out a more indie-flavored style. It's not a bad thing, reminder that I actually do respect Skrillex. But with Madeon, I felt like it was that with, extra sprinkles. As I said, I heard Adventure first, so when I first heard Worlds, I was pretty much immediately disappointed. The first thing that bugged me about this album was its title. Worlds is an unbelievably pretentious title. If you ask me, in order to pull off an album title like Worlds, you'd need to A, do well in the atmosphere department so that you can easily get engulfed in it, and B, have some variety there too, because, Worlds is plural. Porter Robinson did neither of these. First of all, the album was way too samey sounding to justify the S. With all of these songs pulling off more or less the same production style and atmosphere, and only a couple of songs actually tried to put atmosphere into the focus, namely Sea of Voices and Fellow Feeling. I'll give him points for trying, but I just mostly felt a pretentious empty hole on this album. Meanwhile, Madeon's album is called Adventure. That's also pretty pretentious, but it's more fitting and easier to pull off. Adventure is singular, meaning that being samey-sounding would make for a more cohesive experience. Ironically, Adventure was actually less samey-sounding than Worlds. Again, Madeon more or less pulled off the same production style for every song, but there was a bit more variety than Porter Robinson offered. Some songs tended more towards the indie rockish sound, like La Lune, Nonsense, Innocence, or Home, while some felt more electronic and glitchier, like OK, Imperium, or Pixel Empire, and some were lighter and breezier, like Beings. And there were tracks like You're On, which didn't focus on either side, and in fact kinda had like this weirdly pitched and chopped up vocal line as the hook. Vaguely reminding me of DJ Snake on songs like Lean On. Though, better. Or Pay No Mind, which almost had kind of a 70s disco feel to it. Even the intro track, Isometric, had like this cool sounding atmosphere to it as well. I didn't get nearly the same sense of variety or attention to detail out of Worlds. There was one big reason for my getting bored with Worlds where Adventure kept me interested, and that was the guest singers. For me, the singers on Polygon Dust, Lionhearted, and Hear the Bells all sounded the same to me. And the only variety provided was the female vocalists, which either sounded like real people or didn't sound like real people. But other than that, weren't particularly distinguishable either. Meanwhile, the singers on Adventure all sounded unique and brought something different to the song that a different one couldn't. For instance, Dan Smith's voice gave a little more weight and maturity to La Lune, and Passion Pit's voice on Pay No Mind does, well, the exact opposite. Actually, he's a little annoying, but he definitely keeps his unique personality intact. Now, despite everything I've said, I think both of these albums have one big strength in common. They both have some fantastic melodies, and I don't think one is better than the other in that respect. Though the melodies on both of these albums were all kinda samey sounding, there was no denying that both nailed it in this department. There were lots of catchy melodies on here, and even my least favorite songs on both had great melodies too. Like on Worlds, I may not have been able to distinguish between the singers on Polygon Dust, Lionhearted, or Hear the Bells, but I could definitely distinguish between the songs thanks to their catchy individual melodies. Worlds also had a number of songs with just straight default MIDI sounds. Ordinarily I'd mark this against the guys, it makes them sound less professional, but I happen to be one of the few people in the world who actually likes the sound of default prepackaged MIDI, so, you know. But Adventure's melodies were just as good. Songs like You're On are way too easy to get stuck in my head. That song in particular is probably the catchiest song on either album. Overall, I think it's pretty clear which album is going to get the higher score from me. When all is said and done, Worlds was mostly a disappointment to me, with really only Fellow Feelings sticking out to me. Yes, the orchestral strings were actually a very nice touch, and the song almost kinda has like a BT-ish feel to it. Lots of different sounds in it. But other than that, Worlds has not much to it for me outside of a handful of dang good melodies. Adventure was better in pretty much every way. Though there wasn't any song on here that was as impressive as Fellow Feeling, Madeon's production style in general has more variety and attention to detail than Porter Robinson's. And you know, one great song does not a great album make. Sure, Porter Robinson had a bunch of pretty good songs on the side, but I don't see myself returning to him as much as Madeon in the future. So overall, on Porter Robinson, I'm feeling a solid 7 out of 10, with my favorite songs being Divinity, Sad Machine, Flicker, Polygon Dust, Natural Light, Sea of Voices, and of course Fellow Feeling, and my least favorite song, probably Hear the Bells. Whereas for Madeon, I'm feeling a solid 8, with my favorite songs being Isometric, You're On, OK, La Lune, Beings, Imperium, Pixel Empire, and Home. My least favorite song, probably Zephyr, just because it's one of the least memorable. But of course, this is just my opinion, you can feel free to disagree with it, and seeing good amount of big Porter Robinson fans, I'm assuming that will be the case. But I'd like to hear your opinion in the comments, or if you have any requests for what I should review in the future, tell me about that as well, though hopefully next should be Deadmau5 4x4=12. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.